You guys are probably definitely confused too about this AllStar format. And are you shocked by the Spire news that came out today? Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, my name's Taylor Kitchen and welcome back to Above the Yellow Line, where we talk about NASCAR all the time. And before we get into the shocking news and the format, make sure to like this video and turn on the notification bell so you know when we post. But that said, the shocking news out of Spire today is that Rodney Childers and Spire Motorsports have mutually agreed to part ways effective immediately. Spire Motorsports co-owner Jeff Dickerson released a statement basically saying, hey, during the off week, we took some time to assess where we're at and figure out the best pathway forward. And unfortunately, that's just not with Rodney. Rodney Childers released a statement on his Instagram story saying, quote, I know this is a shock, but also know that not everything works out perfectly all the time. He went on to say, I'm going to use this time to spend time with the people that I care about, family and friends, and try to figure out, what the pathway forward for him in motorsports looks like. What does the future hold for him? And right now, we don't know. We also don't know who's going to be the new crew chief with Justin Haley in the number 7. So that's an unknown too. We also know that this 7 team has undergone quite a few changes, particularly with the pit crew. There was a crew swap between the 7 team and Kyle Larson's team. So there's a lot of adjustments happening over there at Spire Motorsports, particularly with this 7 car. But what's crazy to me is we are going to go on to 10 races into this season, and we are already swapping driver and crew chief pairings. And there's something to be said. When chemistry doesn't work out between a driver and a crew chief, it's evident and we can tell. But what's also wild to me is that you compare where this car was in the point standings last year to this year, and there is a notable difference for sure. So it's a crazy change. It's wild. It's completely unexpected. I know Rodney was like, you guys are going to be shocked. I know you guys are shocked. But sometimes things just don't work out. Pairings just don't work out. But I hope whoever goes in to fill Rodney's shoes will help elevate that team and give Justin Haley the support he needs to go out there and compete well on a consistent basis. We know that if we give Justin Haley great equipment, he will elevate it. He's known for elevating equipment. So I hope he has good people that are going to be around him for the rest of the season. And to Rodney, I do hope he finds a home somewhere in the motorsports industry. He is a staple in NASCAR. He is a championship winning crew chief in NASCAR. I hope somebody is able to recognize that talent, take him in, and hopefully wherever he goes, it is a good fit for all parties involved. But crazy and unfortunate news from Spire Motorsports that they and Rodney Childers are mutually parting ways effective immediately. Before we get into this confusing and chaotic format for the All-Star race, I did want to talk about a very particular talking point here that might be uncomfortable for some to talk about. For others, it is much needed that we have this discussion. But I'm talking about Katherine here. It's no secret that her tenure in NASCAR this year has been less than kind to her, from Daytona to Rockingham. And of course, with Rockingham, the tough part there was she was getting lapped. She had moved up and held her lane so the leaders could go by her. William Sawalich ran into the back of her and she spun. And fortunately, and of course, Casey Kane had to be involved in that. But from that, there has been incredible backlash and just crazy, crazy, stupid stuff on social media that I wanted to talk about. And Katherine Legge talked about too on her podcast, Throttle Therapy. I wanted to read some quotes from her. She said, quote, I will say the hate mail, the death threats, and the inappropriate sexual comments that I have received aren't just disturbing, they're unacceptable. She also said, quote, let me be very clear. I am here to race and I am here to compete, and I won't tolerate any of these threats to my safety or to my dignity, whether that's on track or off it. The fact that she's receiving death threats for being involved in an incident on track. Would we give death threats to another driver for something like that? The answer is no. No, we would not. The fact that somebody such as Katherine Legge, who was well respected in the motorsports industry for her accomplishments in sports car racing, etc., is dealing with this when she comes to this community is unfortunate. And yes, women in motorsports deal with this on a consistent daily basis. I hate to say, I deal with this stuff too. I'm not behind the wheel. There's an added pressure to that I am personally glad that I don't deal with. But Katherine does have to deal with that. And the fact that this year she's had to deal with it so much within the NASCAR space is pretty disappointing. And that's not on NASCAR. That's the fan base, you guys. That's on us. Whether we're not helping support her, which so many people are, and I love to see that. But it's on that loud minority of folks that are just spewing hate and disgusting comments out there and think that's okay. One, touch grass, get some fresh air, maybe step away from your computer screen. But two, it's what do you hope to accomplish by that? If you're uncomfortable with a woman in racing, that sucks. I'm sorry. We're here to stay. That's fine, whether it's on the track or off the track. And I'm not very candid in these videos a lot, and I tend to use my platform as a way to be positive, but there are some times where I see these things, and I see somebody that I respect with Katherine Legge just being torn down on track for just simply learning. But she's being put in these case scenarios where she's trying to succeed. It's going to be hard for her to potentially succeed, and she's making the most out of it that she can. Same with other drivers that are in similar situations as well, but they don't get the same amount of crap or, I guess, blowback from all of this. The one thing that she said too, and I would agree with this as well, is we all understand that the fans in NASCAR are going to have an opinion. We all have an opinion. We all have a take. We all want to say what we want to say. And Katherine says that's fine. She totally understands that. She respects NASCAR fans, motorsports fans, anybody's really stance on having an opinion. But, quote, there is a very thin line between feedback and personal attacks, and it's really disappointing to see how often that line is crossed. So I think going forward, a lot of you that follow me support Katherine and can understand that she's had a frustrating tenure in NASCAR so far this season, but support her and recognize, the stats, the analytics, and what happened on track at Rockingham, right? But it's a good time to also kind of reflect and say, when I'm putting opinions out there on the internet, when I'm making a video or whatever that is, am I going about it the right way? Am I going about it in a respectful way to all parties? Do I want to go about it in a respectful way to all parties? And that's kind of the standard I hold myself to. I want to have like an opinion sandwich. I want to be able to make an opinion on something that I truly do believe, but I also want to say, here's the other side of it too. So my side of this is Katherine should not get the hate that she gets. To me, she is an inspiration, and I truly do believe she has not been put in the right scenarios to succeed this year. So I hold that with the wanting to support her part of this too, and I do support her. I want to support her. I want to see her succeed, and it's so hard to do when you're put in these tough situations with a loud minority of fans that are just being hateful. So that said, listen to her podcast if you haven't. She has some really good insight in that it kind of takes you kind of into her mind of how she's processing all of this, the pressure she's under, the kind of mindset that she has coming into the NASCAR space, etc. I highly recommend listening to that. But yeah, just wanted to mention that here. Hopefully we can do a little bit better, not just with Katherine, but all together of raising each other up and supporting one another. Because I think the community needs a little bit more of that right now. But that said, let's move on. The 2025 AllStar Format for North Wilkesboro was released today, and I stared at it for a very long time. I did a lot of reading of the graphics for a very long time, and there were parts of it where I was like, I'm going to have to reread that because I don't get it. This format this year is a departure from last year, where last year was more straightforward and streamlined, I felt. This was like a hold my beer moment for NASCAR because there's a lot to this, but let's go through it together at least. Now, the key differences to note between the 2024 format and the 2025 format is there are changes to the pit crew challenge. There is a change to the race length. It's actually a longer race. There is a manufacturer's challenge, and there is also a promoter's caution. But let's at least start with Friday on the schedule. So Friday, May 16th is when the NASCAR National Series, or at least the Cup Series events, really truly do kick off with the All-Star Race and the All-Star Open qualifying sessions. These drivers will qualify in 3 laps with a pit stop in between. So lap 1, you're going around the track at full speed. Lap 2, you're going to make your pit stop. It is 4 tires only, no fuel. You're going to get back on track to complete that lap, lap 3, and then you're done. And with that pit stop being like a live pit stop, the fastest pit crew to complete that stop is the winner of the pit crew challenge, as long as you have no penalties from that stop. So you got to execute and be perfect on pit road, kind of like you'd have to do during a race weekend, but there's some prizes on the line for this one, at least. That's a little different. So within that, you have the pit crew challenge during those live pit stops, as opposed to having it be something separate. So that's it with Friday. Then you move to Saturday, May 17th, where you have the 2 all-star heat races. Both are 60 laps each, where all laps count, and there is only 1 attempt at overtime. That's very important to note here. The results of Heat Race 1 will determine the inside row for the main event on Sunday, and vice versa. The results from Heat Race 2 will determine the outside row for the main event on Sunday. And speaking of Sunday, this is the day where we have the AllStar Open and, of course, the AllStar race. The AllStar Open is a 100-lap event where all laps count with only one overtime allowed. There's going to be a break in between that around lap 40 for a competition caution type thing. Of course, the two top finishers in that AllStar Open will advance to the main event. And then you have that fan vote. So yes, the fan vote, still very much a thing. Vote for your favorite driver to get into the main event. And those drivers will start towards the back of the pack for the AllStar race. And that AllStar race is now 250 laps long. All laps count, and we have basic overtime rules. There's not just one attempt, as many attempts as it takes, so basic overtime rules within NASCAR. And then, of course, the promoter's caution. This is the new thing that has spiked some online discourse. The promoter's caution is an optional caution that can be thrown before lap 220 in the event. Now, if there is a natural caution on lap 200, then the promoter's caution is no longer in effect. You can no longer use it past that point. However, if it's before lap 220 and there's no natural caution on lap 200, you can use it. Now, it's unclear who's going to have that call. Who's going to throw that caution? Is it going to be Marcus Smith? Is it going to be somebody else? We don't know who's going to be in charge of throwing that. But ultimately, throwing that caution could determine who wins $1 million. Somebody whoever's in charge of that could potentially have the sole right to say, okay, this driver's off sequence. They were leading this whole event. Awesome. I'm going to press that caution button, and now we have a race for $1 million that's completely different and whatever. So it could really determine who wins that, which is pretty insane to think that. But I also can understand why we're throwing something like their promoter's caution into here. The past few races that we've had at North Wilkesboro for the AllStar race have been a runaway from whichever driver is basically in the lead from start to finish. There is rarely any lead changes for this event, and it can be a little stale. So you want to add in an unknown caution somewhere in there that's at least known to the fans, not just like a debris caution or something like that. There is a known what-if caution that could be thrown into play to shake up the results, to keep the fans and the drivers on their toes, which personally, if you want my opinion, I'm not a fan of that, to be quite honest with you. I'd rather have us fix the product versus fixing the race, per se, if I can say it that way. Regardless, we do have this promoter's caution that can be used at certain points in the race before lap 220. Now, the last thing to come up in this AllStar format is the manufacturer's showdown. This is new for the 2025 season. Here is how it works. Per NASCAR, Chevrolet, Ford, and Toyota will be equally represented within this manufacturer's challenge. And according to them, quote, the members per team will be determined by the least represented manufacturer, and an equal number of drivers from the other two manufacturers will be selected based on their final AllStar grid starting positions. NASCAR then went on to explain that these teams will be scored against each other and not by their overall all-star finish. So basically, this means that if you are one of these 9 drivers that will be selected to compete in this all-star manufacturers showdown, you're going to be ranked against them for this award and this recognition. You're not going to be ranked against let's say you had an engine blow and you finished dead last in the entire field. You're not going to be ranked on that, because how this is going to be scored is kind of like golf. Whoever has the least amount of points based off of their finishing position is going to win out of the OEM. So if, let's say you did have an engine blow and you finished 24th, something like that. I don't know. I'm just going to throw out a random number. You would have the 24th point score for your OEM, and you would drag your entire OEM down. So scoring them a 1 through 9 is going to help tremendously if something crazy like that does happen. So that's the format, and in full honesty, it's a lot. It's a lot. I really enjoyed last year's where it was a lot simpler. Like I said, I can understand why we're adding some things into this to build intrigue for a product that's a little lesser than, but I'd rather have a simple product, a simple format where I don't have to constantly look at a piece of paper and try to figure out what's going on, because we've had that before. I'm thinking back a few years ago where Mike Joy had to constantly explain to us what was happening and he was getting confused. I'd rather have something that's straightforward and a little lackluster product-wise than I would having something that I don't understand all the way through. So that's just my take on it. But those are my honest thoughts. I feel like this episode was really filled with honest thoughts, and I don't want to say negativity, because that's not what I like to do here. I don't like to be very negative in my thought processes, but there was a lot of heavy and important stuff to talk about in this episode. So we'll kind of get back to normal for the live stream that we have tonight We have Timmy Hill joining us and a very special guest from the world of NHRA joining us as well. So you want to make sure to stay tuned for that. Of course, we go live every single Wednesday night on the ATYL Media channel. But thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of Above the Yellow Line. Like I said earlier in the show, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and turn on the notification bell so you know when we post. And I want to give a very special shout out to our partners at Happy Hour Racing. They sell officially licensed Formula One, IndyCar, and NASCAR merchandise. Some of my favorite merchandise that they have, I currently have literally sitting across from me. I have a Dale Senior hat that is phenomenal. You guys have to get your hands on it. And when you buy merchandise from there for the rest of this month, you could win some Benzik Designs die-cast display stands, which I swear by. So make sure to go to AboveTheYellowLine.com/giveaway to learn how to enter this giveaway. Also, make sure to support our partners at Happy Hour Racing as well. But thank you all so much for tuning in. And until next time, I'll see ya. Bye.